Hello class. Today you're going to be learning about half steps and whole steps in music. Now, before we jump into that, first you need to know what a keyboard looks like, and this is what a keyboard looks like. And you need to know the notes of a keyboard, so we're about to review that in just a second. As shown here, this is a keyboard that includes two octaves. So you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then you start over again. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we don't quite stop at C. But this is how a keyboard is labeled just on the white keys. Now for the black keys, we have something that looks like this. Now this is the letter C. This is one of the first notes that a student learns. But it's one thing to just know the names of the notes on a keyboard as displayed here. But it's another thing to now learn in this lesson the distance between two different notes. As we learned in class, there are black keys and white keys. Now the white key, C, that I have circled here, and the other key, C sharp, that I have circled here, are what is known as a half step. Now you can see that they're actually touching one another. The white key C is actually touching the black key C sharp. Once again, this is called a half step. Similarly, if we move on from C to C sharp and now circle C sharp and D, because the keys are still touching one another and there are no keys that stand in between these two, this is also considered a half step. Let's look at a different example. Now, I circled the note E and F, and some people might think that this is called a whole step, which we're going to talk more about in a second. But this still is a half step. Why? Because, once again, there is no note in between E and F. They are touching one another, and because there's nothing coming in between them, it is still a half step. Now, let me give you a second to see if you can find another white to white note combination that's a half step, that is not E and F, that is white note to white note. I'll give you a second. And there you have it. The answer is from B to C. That's the other white note combination where it's a half step. So E and F create a half step, and B and C create a half step. Let's do one more example for half steps. Let's say I have the note F, for instance, as circled here. And let's say I want to go up the piano one half step. Where would I go? That's right, I would go to F sharp. Now, say for instance, I want to go down from F by one half step. Where would I be? That's right, you got it. If I wanted to go down from F one half step, I would end up at E, because once again, it's that E to F, B to C white note combination of half steps. So once again, if I want to go up from F by a half step, I'd end up on F sharp, and if I want to go down a half step, I'd end up on E. Now let's move on to talking about whole steps. Since C is our friend, I decided we'd go back there because C is an easy note and it's the first note that we usually learn. So let's go back to C. So earlier we said that if we want to go up a half step from C, we would end up on C sharp. But since we are now going up a whole step, which is two half steps, where do you think that would end up? Well, here's the answer. You would end up on D. So from C to D is a whole step, because from C to C sharp is a half step, and from C sharp to D is another half step, therefore creating a whole step. Another way you can look at it is a whole step has a note in between Half steps don't have notes in between. They are touching one another, and they're the closest possible notes to one another. But in a whole step, you actually do have one note that stands in between them. And in this instance, the note between C and D is C sharp, therefore creating a whole step. Now, since we ended on the note D, how about we start from there? What would be a whole step up from D? I'll let you think about that for 1 second. That's right, E. E would be a whole step up from D, because between D and E, you have one note, D sharp. Let's try another one. Let's go up a whole step from E. Once again, we're going to go a whole step up. This one's a little trickier. And there you have it. A whole step up from E would be F sharp or G flat, whichever way you want to look at it. A little tricky? Well, the reason this is a whole step is because you have, again, one note standing in between E and F sharp. And what's that note? F. F is the note that's standing in between E and F sharp. Let's try another slightly difficult one, and let's start from F sharp. If we are starting at F sharp and we want to go up a whole step, where will we end up? We will end up on G sharp. Again, because why? Because there's a note in between. And what note is in between F sharp and G sharp at the moment? That's correct, G. Let's try one more tricky one, shall we? Okay, say I am on the note A sharp or B flat, same thing. And say I want to go up a whole step. Where will I end up? Now make sure that you go up not only a half step, but you go up 2 half steps. Therefore, you're going to have to end up having a note that's in between. And there you have it. The whole step from A sharp or B flat would be C. Now, if you're wanting to get really clever, we're going to start back at C because, again, it's home base and C is our friend. We've learned what a half step is. It's the closest note next to the note you're starting from. We learned what a whole step was, which is 2 half steps away, or there'll be one note in between. And now we're going to learn what 1.5 steps looks like. So starting from C, it's going to be 3 half steps away, correct? So this is what it will look like. There you go. You will end up on D sharp, or in other words, E flat. Because not only do you have one note now in between, like in a whole step, now you have 2 notes that stand between. And the 2 notes that stand between C and D sharp are C sharp and D. Let's try one more. Let's say we're starting on the note E. Now, we need 2 starting from the note E, you need to have 3 half steps going up, okay? So that means you have 2 notes that will stand in between. What is the answer? There you go. The answer is G, because you have F sharp and F standing in between the 2, equaling a total of 3 half steps. Now let's do a quick review. To review what a half step is the closest distance between 2 notes. So in this example, a half step from C would be C sharp. Once again, a whole step has one note that stands in between, or in other words, it's 2 half steps added together. But there will always be one note in between, and that, in this case, is C sharp. So a whole step from C would be D. And last but not least, 1.5 steps would look like this, from C to D sharp or E flat. The reason being is that now you have 3 half steps and you have 2 notes that stand in between, which would be C sharp and D in this instance. Okay, there you have it. This is our lesson on half steps, whole steps, and 1.5 steps. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask.